There's no question I'm getting special scrutiny because, there are a lot of people who are very threatened, and then, they've seen the recent head-to-head polling against Hillary and how well I do, and, they're worried. There's no question about it.
If you put your personal story out there, then you have an obligation to answer questions about it, and if the voters are satisfied with Dr. Carson's answers, then that'll be the end of the story. If they're not, it won't.
Well, if you have pathological disease, that's a problem. I mean, he wrote it. I didn't write it, but he's going to have to explain a lot of things away. The scholarship situation, the dinner with Westmoreland when Westmoreland wasn't there, and the pyramids.
Well, you're looking live, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There's the stage. It's set. 24 hours and 21 minutes from now is the first debate. The undercard debate actually will have a lineup of 4 candidates. This includes Chris Christie, Mike Huckabee, Bobby Jindal, and there you see Rick Santorum. And then at 9 p.m. Eastern, you see the main stage debate, and that will have 8 candidates this time. The lineup right there. This comes as some new polls out today in South Carolina. Monmouth, well-respected poll there, has Ben Carson and Donald Trump essentially tied at the top. And there you see Rubio making a move, Cruz, and the rest. And then here is the RCP, the Real Clear Politics average, and the national race, and where it stands as of this evening. Let's begin there. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Mara, weekend of Carson talk and all this back and forth about the bio, how much effect it's going to have. It seems like he's turned the corner, at least on the media narrative, in Republican circles.
We haven't seen any negative effects of this on Carson. He made a very strong attack on the media. He called it a witch hunt. He said the secular progressive movement is afraid of me. That's why this is happening. And he raised $3.5 million. So a backlash for him, to benefit him. You do see the race, pretty clear tiers, Carson and Trump, one tier, the top tier, and then Rubio and Cruz, Bush close behind. And that's the structure of the race right now. The big question is Trump is the only candidate who has talked about the Carson problems. No one else has touched it with the 10-foot pole, except for you heard Chris Christie say he should answer the questions. But Carson actually went after him.
No,
Trump went after Carson, and we'll see if he does it tomorrow night. I wonder if Carson is the one person that Trump can't attack without hurting himself.
Well, it's not all about the horse race. Obviously, these candidates want to talk substance, and ahead of an economic debate, Ben Carson putting out some details of a flat tax proposal.
I'm in favor of a flat tax because of proportionality. Everybody should be hit exactly the same. In order to, remain revenue neutral, we would have to make that rate at about 15% and eliminate all deductions and all the loopholes. That would get us about $2.7 trillion, which is still short of the $3.5 trillion that we need.
So starting to get into more details, Charles, I should point out, thanks for being so dressed up for us tonight.
I'm trying to raise the sartorial level of the panel. This is my feeble attempt. Yeah, well, look, Carson basically gave that answer in the CNBC debate, and when he tried to close the gap, the $0.8 trillion gap, he wasn't very successful, so he'll probably be asked about that tomorrow. If he says it's revenue neutral, he's going to have an answer for that. But I think in the end, this debate is all about one thing, Jeb Bush. He's had 3 bad debates, one more, and he's not going to drop out of the race, but he'll really be dead man walking. He's got to show a spark, and that means a moment. Look, the entire season has become sort of theatrical. The ones who've risen are the ones who've had the moments. Carly had the moment, Rubio had, Cruz has had, and Bush has been very passive and unimpressive. That doesn't mean he is, but that's how he appears, and that's why his numbers are low. So I think all the pressure is on him, which is going to make it all the more difficult. But that is the story going in. It might be the story going out.
Obviously, Donald Trump, weekend on Saturday Night Live. It was only about 12 minutes on the show. Among the more interesting clips, him dancing to Drake, which obviously people commented on. But he has been, as Mara mentioned, on the attack. Is that going to play out in the way things are, lining up?
Well, I watched some of that Saturday Night Live. These are the sacrifices I make for our viewers. I hadn't seen it in years, and I will never get that time back.
And there he is
painful.
with the moves.
And not because of Donald Trump, by the way. It was just painful. It's not a funny show anymore. Yeah, I think Charles is right that certainly Jeb Bush will be one of the focal points of the debate tomorrow night. But I think this emerging dynamic between Ben Carson and Donald Trump is significant. I mean, you've seen Donald Trump basically take the side of the mainstream media in its criticism or scrutiny or attacks, depending on how you look at it, of Ben Carson, calling it a pathological disease. I mean, suggesting that Ben Carson can't help himself but to lie about his narrative. One of the
Trump
reasons
says that Carson wrote that in one of his books about
correct, but I think open to interpretation what Donald Trump meant to say there. Look, I think one of the reasons that Ben Carson has been able to survive these attacks is because they've featured so much overreach from the media. I mean, you had this political story that said that Carson admitted that he had fabricated this whole story about West Point and the scholarship when Carson had actually admitted no such thing, and he pushed back strongly and I think very effectively on that. So it'll be interesting. I mean, we saw the media be a major part of the story coming out of the CNBC debate. I don't expect that to be the case tomorrow night because of the way that our colleagues at Fox Business are likely to conduct themselves in focusing on substance. But I do think it'll be interesting to see if Trump sort of keeps echoing these mainstream media criticisms of Ben Carson.
I've talked to all of them. They like to get in the weeds, so I think we are going to get more substantive policy stuff. And the answers will be 90 seconds with 60 seconds rebuttal, so that's a different dynamic. I do want to play one more soundbite today. Donald Trump has also been attacking Marco Rubio on this credit card controversy down in Florida. Rubio again out today responding with this.
Well, you know, I don't think someone who's taken, like Donald Trump has, 4 companies into bankruptcy is in any position to lecture anyone about finances. But when it comes to the charge card to the Republican Party, we put it out there. It's most people that look at it reasonably say this is a silly story, and it certainly has nothing to do with the future of America.
Well, I think that Donald Trump has gone after Rubio before. He says his credit cards are a disaster. I bet he'll go after him again. I think it's less dangerous for Donald Trump to go after Marco Rubio than Ben Carson. Ben Carson is an icon in the conservative movement. We've all learned just how big a deal Ben Carson is for years and years. You know, in all sorts of aspects of it, the evangelical community, the homeschooling community, you know, all sorts of aspects. He is revered, and that is why you don't see anybody else taking him on. Marco Rubio has had other detractors, including Jeb Bush, not very effectively, but I expect they might be more than just Trump going after Rubio tomorrow night.
You were going to say?
Yeah, well, Trump, when he went after Rubio on the credit card story, said that Rubio was at the time running the party, which of course he wasn't running the party. And the irony of that attack is that Donald Trump supported the person who was running the party at the time, Charlie Crist, the Florida governor.
Final word, Charles.
I think Trump's instinct is always to go after whoever is nipping his heels. I think he will go after Rubio. He likes to do that. And what he's doing with Carson is it's just sort of innuendo. He drops in a hint here. Well, there's a story of, you know, who knows if it's important, but let me remind you about it. You know, and this scholarship story is ridiculous. It is obvious that in the military and in the ROTC in Detroit, they said to him, if you want to get into West Point, it's a formality. You'll get in, you're distinguished, you've done extremely well academically and leadership, and of course it comes with a full scholarship, meaning you don't pay. And that's what he said. So he says, I was offered a full scholarship. He was offered informally, essentially, and decided not to apply. But there are a lot of folks who've been to West Point who said that's exactly how they got in. They were told you're a perfect candidate, you apply, you'll get in. It's a formality, and they applied and got in. Carson didn't. Big deal.
Do you sense that people are just sick of that? Sick of the credit card thing, sick of...
I think so. And this stuff is really petty. Carson tells a story, obviously a pretty intimate story, about wanting to attack his mother. CNN interviews 9 people from Detroit. It's a pretty big city. And decides nobody can remember that, as if any of them would have been in the room. And that this lack of people saying, I was there, I heard about this, is evidence that it didn't happen, is preposterous. So, you know, a lot of people tell stories of their histories, where nobody can verify it. It either happened the way it did or it didn't. And you're going to believe the Carson or a negative story in CNN. I think it's over for him.